Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Last week, Positive Luxury and its knowledge partner, Bain & Company, launched LuxCo 2030, a vision of sustainable luxury, a report that imagines what a successful and sustainable luxury brand will look like in a decade's time. Today, Positive Luxury CEO Diana Verde Nieto is joined by two amazing guests from Bain & Company to discuss the finding of the report and answer all the questions you may have. Claudia D'Arpizio, partner specialized in the luxury and fashion goods sector, and Matteo Capellini, associate partner. Before we start, I want to remind you that this webinar will be 45 minutes, including 15 minutes of Q&A at the end, so you can submit your question during the webinar in the Q&A box, and the panel will answer them at the end. Over to you, Diana.
Thank you very much, Claudia, and it's a great pleasure to have today Claudia and Matteo to present joint work, LuxCo 30. I don't know how you both feel, but I think it was almost like giving birth to an elephant. So yeah, it's been a labor of love, I would say. But it's been super exciting. We are very proud to have Bain & Co as a knowledge partner, and this relationship is totally reciprocal. So super excited about that. Obviously, LuxCo 30, I'd like you to close your eyes for a second and imagine yourself in the future. And this is not a very distant future. It's not a utopian future. It's a future that is very much linked to what will happen in reality. What we think it will happen in reality. Maybe not all of it, but a lot of it. So COP26 is happening in no time, November this year. And obviously, you know, carbon is the most important topic that is being discussed, a part of diversity and inclusion, of course, in boardrooms. How do we achieve our 2050 targets in terms of net zero? So LuxCo 30 have that question in mind, and yeah, and I like to imagine that so as a frame. So this is for both, for Matteo and for Claudia. In sustainability has climbed the corporate agenda over the last 3 to 5 years faster than any other topic, and that is also including diversity and inclusion. So Matteo, to deep dive on the 5 years or in the 5 key areas of the report, can you give us a quick summary of what we found into LuxCo 30?
Yeah, sure. First of all, hi Diana, thanks for having us today. I think I would also like to start maybe by giving the background of why we came to writing this piece, which was a kind of an emotional journey, as well as we are all passionate about that. But as you said, sustainability really climbed the corporate agenda, and I think today the great majority of CEOs in the industry have sustainability within the top 2 or 3 priorities on their agenda. Now, what we see in the industry, there are 2 main problems. The first one is that not a great number of companies really set their ambitions in terms of sustainability. So there's a gap in really imagining themselves 5 or 10 or 20 years from now from a sustainability perspective. And the second problem is that there's a lack of capability, because this is a new topic. It climbed the corporate agenda, but in a very fast time, and so we are lagging behind in terms of capabilities. These 2, let's say, barriers gave us collectively the idea of imagining a company in 2030. So to remove the barriers of the short-term problems that often company has, and start thinking a little bit more future back, as we like to say, and make the first step easier. So to your question, in this piece we broke down and identified the 5 main areas, if you wish, that a company that will be successful in this journey in 10 to 10 years from now will have tackled. And the 5 are for sure redefining the brand purpose. And I will Claudia elaborating on that, she's the top guru in this. Those companies will have found the way to decouple growth from volumes, which is if you wish, the elephant of the room of today's discussion, because everyone is saying we should embed circular business model. We try to give an answer about the feasibility and the math and economic model behind it, and we found a very positive and encouraging answer. And then building, the third one is building transparency and traceability along the supply chain, that in our view will become, if you wish, a normal part of the customer experience as well. The fourth one is maximizing the impact, the real impact on the planet and the people. And the fifth one is really transforming what today is often seen as a cost, in our opinion, the wrong ways, as instead look at sustainability as a value creator, also from an economic and financial point of view.
Thank you, Matteo. And I could not agree more with you in terms of, the context of like how companies will be able to keep growing, but at the same time, decrease their environmental footprints. But of course, we, as people and consumers, obviously, have a big role to play. So, I mean, you mentioned consumers earlier, and Claudia, I know that you're really well versed on this. So can you tell us a little bit more about, okay, so what is the role that people play on this?
Yes, so people play, and we play a super important role, and I think that the change in behaviors and the change in really putting this topic at the center in the mind of the consumer has been the major driver for change that moved the companies to really put sustainability on top of their agenda. And this has come in particular with the rise of the millennial and the Gen Z that now account for the majority of the purchases in luxury. And that in particular this year has been the driving force of the resilience of this market that has declined, but not as much as that could be without the driving impulse of the young generations that were still very active. But these generations are really questioning the role of the brand inside the sustainability agenda and on various elements. And they're asking companies to be activists on these topics. And this is, again, not being perfect, but being part of the conversation and doing part of what they could to improve in this journey, while they are doing a lot. And they are for sure shifting their consumption towards brands that are more socially and environmentally sustainable, and but also they are recycling more, they are consuming less or consuming better if you want. And in particular, if you see Gen Z and if you see what they did this year, they increased their second-hand and rental consumption. They increased their ability to sew their own clothes or just retouch their own clothes. They look at their wardrobe in a dynamic way, and they also sell what they don't use anymore to give a longer life and a second life to their products. So there is an active participation of consumers. This is not the same for all ages, and it's more skewed toward young generations, but they are strongly influencing their older brothers, their parents, and their older friends. And this is becoming what we call a millennial mindset more than a millennial issue. So it's really something that is influencing larger consumer base and larger conversations. And it's not just a Western behavior, but we see growing awareness and growing interest in Asia and China specifically. And given that Chinese account already for more than 30% of the global luxury consumption and will account for 50% of the global consumption by 2025, it's important that they have the young consumers that have this topic on top of their agenda. And I think that this is where luxury brands are starting to really understand that this can be also a big risk not to be super active on this topic. And also even if they were active, they were very shy in communicating their objectives, the goals. They are much more transparent now, even if, as you were saying, maybe we should probably catch up. And we were envisaging a future that is not so far, because for sure 2030 is 9 years from now. It means that many of these things has to be already in a clear roadmap of implementation. So it's not just dreams.
Absolutely, and I think 2021 is two halves of the year, as somebody said in my team the other day. So we have the first part, which is still many countries in the world are locked down, like in the UK, like in Italy, and it's going to be the second part of the year in which, you know, finally we will be able to first and foremost party a little, but then perhaps like rebalance and think about, okay, how do we want to live for, you know, the less millennial, really. And we see a lot of companies where we said, actually, like you said, Claudia, actually thinking about this beyond the conversation or storytelling, but actually actively embedding sustainability across all the different silos within the organization and making it, instead of a silo, like a complete holistic way.
Yeah.
And this is a question about holistic to both of you. So a holistic approach obviously is fundamental to make this right. CEOs and executive teams do, they need to embrace this, but actually there is a few no regrets move that should contribute to basically a better agenda. So what do you think are those kind of few no regrets things that companies should be implementing?
Yeah, I would start from the first thing that Matteo mentioned before, that he's rethinking, not rethinking means changing, but rethinking to the purpose of this brand and embedding in this purpose a sustainable growth and a sustainable impact. And this is not just because this is important, but also because this is a business driver. So there is a lot of products, too many products, even too many brands, if you wish. And newness is at the foundation of fashion. So you always look for something new. You always look for the latest trend. At the same time, brands need to distinguish themselves, need to have their purpose, and they give a larger reason to buy, that is not just the new product or the new stuff. And so this is where I think the brands are now rethinking why they are in business. That is not just for selling clothes, but it's for giving a broader message. And this starts from the top, but not only from CEOs, but also I think creative directors and the creative teams play an important role here, because this is where the holistic approach starts. If you don't think when conceiving the product, if you don't think to these topics when really thinking to your brand platform, then it's very difficult to cascade this on all the other aspects of the organization. So it's them that are also very influential inside the organizations, also because they keep a lot of the cultural elements of the brand in their hands, where I think the journey should start. And when it starts from them, it's much more successful. And when it starts from them with the, I would say, consistently with the CEO vision and with the shareholders' vision, is enormously successful. So that's where we think the holistic approach need to start, or at least need to embrace. And it's really where I think also consumers see authenticity instead of seeing the greenwashing approach, or just jumping on the fashion topics that are relevant for consumers. Because if you have this embedded in your purpose, in your brand platform, in your brand DNA, this is much more authentic, and is true across all the touch points and all the things that you do. So that's it's a no regret move, we think, because again, there are many brands, and not all of them are successful right now. And the ones that are successful are the ones that found their spike in terms of authenticity of what they are doing and what they are telling to the consumers.
Thank you.
Speaking about no regret moves, after ticking that box, which is a very difficult box to tick of purpose and meaning, there are a lot of operational stuff brands and companies should do. And the first one is really building the transparent baseline of the point of departure. What is the impact that the company has today on people and planet? And this is, again, it's when it comes to analyzing your own supply chain, is not easy, but also the fact that this is difficult shouldn't scare executive, because it's possible and it's feasible. And once you define the baseline, it's really important to set science-based targets that will align companies' goal to more geopolitical and global goals of net zero, for example. And once you've done that, you can design a portfolio of projects. You can pick what we call in Spain shields and swords, so picking your battle, because you cannot fight all the battle, of course. Is what we call sword. What is your main the area you would like to pick the most in the sustainability area, and your shields, the things where you want to protect yourself, because you still have to act on many different axes, and building commitment among the leadership team. And finally, there's we believe a very big topic of governance and operating model, because companies today are not exactly structured in the perfect way to tackle sustainability holistically. So that's probably another no regret move to address at the beginning of the journey.
Thank you, Matteo. And I'd like to stay with you into that point, which is the governance piece. And like you said, not many companies are really actually geared to that, and they don't sometimes think that sustainability has to do, for example, with topics like women or diversity and inclusion and so on. So how a company has to go about into thinking about sustainability like holistically in a 360? And I like also after Claudia, if you can also get your views, because I know you have done incredible amount of work in this particular agenda as well.
Well, I think that the way we should look at it is that sustainability is not a function inside an organizational chart, but it's a mindset and a set of capabilities as well. So there are a lot of analogies with digital on this topic. If you think about a few years, not so many actually back, but there was the IT department, the only ones in the organization knowing something about digital. Now it's clearly embedded in marketing, in operations, and supply chain, everywhere. So the same thing it's very likely to happen with sustainability, where today we have some champions, often a sustainability officer with a small team, but then we see it rapidly evolving towards a more something more spread into organization. And again, this goes a lot through capability building and training, where there's a big gap today.
Thank you, Matteo. And Claudia, what is your take? Because you have a great overview from a consumer side as well.
You're mute, Claudia.
Sorry. Yes, I'm touching in particular on diversity, equity, and inclusion topic that, as you were saying, often is now treated as the rest of sustainability, also because many of these champions that Matteo was mentioning are more champions on the environmental part and are working on the supply chain and the emissions. While I think that for luxury and fashion specifically, the diversity, equity, and inclusion topic and agenda is also very important. It's a global industry, and for global industry, we mean, again, as I was saying, that this is conceived mainly in Europe and US, but is sold and speaks with a super diverse public of consumers, mostly Asian, but also from all cultures and subcultures in the world, and has been strongly monolithic in the cultural message up to now, while the consumer are asking for a lot of cultural relevance. And cultural relevance is very easy to say, but very difficult to do, because it goes around, can go into cultural appropriation, and you can make a lot of mistakes. And now what is clear is that you are much more transparent, and that consumers are judging you. In particular, if you're raising the bar in terms of your commitment on these topics, then people are much more looking at what you do. So diversity is a key enabler for an internal culture that is also driving an external message. Because for sure you can be super diverse, and luxury and fashion companies are diverse from a gender standpoint, from a racial standpoint, from a sexual orientation standpoint, but then you have to have also an inclusive culture. That means that these minorities inside the organization are participating to the right decisions, are really listened, and can thrive into the organization, and they can feel that they can feel to be their best self. And this is not always the case, because even these organizations are very hierarchical very often, and even the creative departments that I mentioned before, that should be kind of the highland of diffuse creativity and diversity, are often very hierarchical, and it's very difficult to convey a diversity message. So this is becoming a topic that is super important. For some brands, is a strong territory of conversation. If you think to inclusivity, gender fluidity, these are all terms that you find on Instagram on any fashion post, or body positivity. But then if you look to the culture of these companies, there is still a lot to do. And the leaders in the space are really trying to catch up on this, because it's clear that it's both a risk management topic, but also a strong competitive advantage to have, again, authenticity on what you do internally and what you communicate externally. That is so important.
Thank you so much for that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I like the t-shirts that says diversity and inclusion is not a policy. It's how do you behave, and it has to be thought globally, but very much executed, locally with a local mindset. And I don't know how, we are 2:23, so we have not that much more time for this conversation. So I'd like to ask a question. Well, it's actually, what is your final thought? What advice would you give businesses today that are starting into, this journey of embedding sustainability across all business functions, and start thinking about sustainability as a transversal side of the organization? So maybe I can start with you, Matteo, in terms of like, okay, what advice would you give companies as we are moving to 2030?
Well, I think that first of all, setting a bold target, a bold ambition is something that sometimes, if not often, scares executives. At the same time, there are a lot of examples that we saw where setting a bold ambition, something that today you clearly don't know in all the details how you will reach that, but setting a bold ambition is a powerful force of moving consciences and people towards the goal. So this is probably the first thing, and then it's really experiment, because this is again, it's a new topic. Capabilities are missing, but what are not missing for sure are ideas inside the organization. So building on those ideas and experiment is something that always pays off. And I'm thinking especially on a circular business model, which is something that we briefly touched upon, but it's big part of the equation of this sustainability journey.
Yeah, and sorry, over to you, Claudia.
No, and I was saying that also these setting the goals means, in my opinion, that you need to start looking at yourself in a very honest way. So really also understanding your point of departure, not in terms of only what you do, but also which is your culture, is super important. And I think that start listening to the people that work with you and with the organization is a little bit harsh, because you will, if you ask, people will answer, and you may not like the answers many times. And I think, but this is important, because I think the first consumers that you have are the people that work with you, are your teams, your organization. And so again, setting bold ambition is important, but also understanding the point of departure is super important. And there is a journey that every individual is making, talking and discussing and studying around this topic. The awareness and the ability to understand complex issues is improving quite rapidly. But these are very complex issues, and you don't have a silver bullet here. You have to do many things, and so it's a journey. But you need to be very honest on your point of departure. I think it's where we are a little bit missing now, because the bold ambitions probably are there. The honest analysis on the point of departure not there yet always.
I could not agree more with you about that. And it's obviously scary to make those big commitments. And, you know, it's easy and sometimes quite, okay, we can put them to 2050, like we've just been discussing, but that's too far away. And the thing is, collaboration is everything, and the tools are here, and technology is available. It's just basically the point of departure is really having a good look at yourself, and then have the courage, I think, and the respect for people and the planet to really go and embark into this journey of change. But I think it's exciting. I am very honored to have you both in this conversation with me, and we'll open the questions to the floor, because I could ask you questions all afternoon, but I think it's your turn now to pop your questions on the Q&A for Claudia and for Matteo. So the first question, it says, you say millennials, this is for you, Claudia. You said millennials and Gen Zs are the target audience, are the target audience, sorry, it keeps moving. How do you look at markets like India, where the average population is 20 years old? And do you think sustainable luxury should be adopted by brands in Indian markets? And what are your strategic recommendations for international brands set up in India?
So India, it's a difficult market. They have strong local tastes, strong local culture, and I think that one of the enabler that luxury brands missed up to now to really conquer India was really this angle of cultural diversity and the ability to listen to the local consumer. So yes, probably sustainability and holistic approach in sustainability, including elements, strong elements of diversity and inclusion for a culture that is so strongly connotated and that probably refuses some of the Western diktats of fashion. But at the same time, you can cross-fertilize and you can fusion with the creative point of view of luxury brands. This is the way to go forward there. And it's clear that it's a difficult market for many other reasons, structural, political, but it's also a market that is very young, as we were saying, and that has strong traditions of beauty, design, fashion. And so I see here a future where you can have a strong cross-fertilization of cultures in the way forward. So it's, I think, an interesting market for the next 10 years.
Thank you. We have a question from Freya. Say, how do you think sustainable strategies for luxury differ from high street brands for either of you?
Well, I think that luxury here starts with an advantage, because one of the key points of sustainability is really the life cycle of the product and the number of products that are manufactured and end up in a landfill, if you wish. And this is something that it's less relevant for luxury players. So on the other hand, luxury have another advantage, which is the ability to build a circular business model more easily, probably, and that's what we elaborated a bit in LuxCo 2030, envisioning a brand that, on average, 10 years from now, will have 1/3 of its sales from circular business model, like renting or second hand. And by the way, it's fun to see the things that we were writing in this piece, and then right after the publication, we are starting seeing headlines of big groups buying stocks into second-hand platforms. So I think that's really the good direction. So definitely, luxury is safer than high street from that perspective, and the reflection and reinvention of high street brands probably should be much more invasive in the business model.
Thank you, Matteo. Naman says, what about the leather industry and the luxury touch? So how can leather become a sustainable product?
I think leather is one of the key priorities for many luxury brands to find a substitution that can be more sustainable, but also still deploy the luxury touch and the luxury feeling. I think that Hermès just published that they are investing on a possible alternative leather. So I know that all the luxury big groups are investing in or studying alternatives that maybe cannot be total substitution of the leather, but another source of supply to reduce the impact on that, and also to improve on this element. It's for sure for them, leather goods is the key category, as we all know, in terms of growth, both revenue growth and profitability. And it's also the key important point, one of the key important point when it comes to sustainability and raw materials. So it's a field where I think we will see a lot of innovation in the next years.
Yes, and if I might, thank you very much, actually, Claudia. And if I might add as well, is also there is a lot of investment and actually looking into regenerative agriculture as well, in terms of how do we use the advantage of agriculture as it is, in terms of not just basically like carbon capture and so on. So I think that's also a point.
Yeah, this is also linked to the overall sustainability agenda of the planet, because it's linked also to the food industry. In reality, if there is a big trend, and we are very happy that meat consumption is declining, and while meat consumption declines, you have less animals for the luxury leather goods industry. So this is also a big constraint. This is just a second product, so it's not, we are not killing animals for the leather, but it's just the second products of the food industry. So it's important that all the overall agenda is linked to that, and I think this will be driving force for innovation also for luxury brands to find alternatives.
Thank you very much, Claudia. We have here a question that, do you think that implementing sustainability strategies will require a big investment in technology, for example, blockchain?
Well, investment in technology will be clear enabler of the process, especially when we think about the traceability of the supply chain. But I think here that the biggest investment is in people mindset and capabilities at the beginning. That will make a big change in this journey, and then of course certain pillars of the sustainability journey will require also capex investment. That's quite sure. But when we look at sustainability from again a holistic perspective, there will be clearly items where sustainability strategy will add cost, but also a lot of items where the sustainability strategy will remove costs. So I think that net is the equation we'll need to look at.
Thank you very much, Matteo. I've got another question here. Which are the most advanced players, LuxCo that are implementing a successful sustainability strategy? So which are the most successful players that are implementing a successful sustainability strategy?
Now, I think that we don't like to discuss on single brand strategies overall. I think that sustainability is for sure in the agenda of all the big companies and big groups. Then there are some brands that are putting sustainability at the center of their DNA, and this was just the case at their inception. So if you take Stella McCartney, for instance, and starting again with the creative vision that starts from big love for the planet and for human being, this is at the center. But I think that beyond these brands that embedded sustainability many years ago, now all the big brands, the ones that are making the difference also in terms of volumes, are embracing it quite strongly. And so I think that we will see a lot of progress because it's important that we keep the agenda on the ones that are really moving the big business and the big volumes.
Thank you, Claudia. Here we have, what are the main challenges of luxury brands to manage stock, and how can technology help in solving this issue?
Well, stock is certainly one of the key questions today of luxury brand. That's why we took this journey and tried to imagine with LuxCo how the breakdown of sales for different channels would look like. And what we found out is that it's likely to imagine a world where companies will get a significant part of their revenues from actually business models that do not require stock building, like again second hand or rental. At the same time, we're also envisioning a trend which we already see today on the market, which is the made on order business models. So basically, with the brands and companies start manufacturing products once they are ordered, and so all these action will definitely contribute in reducing the level of stock, which is something that differently from 5 to 10 years ago, is strictly under the lens of brands now, and circular business model will help big time reducing this problem.
And there is also something that is less sexy as a topic, that is better planning. That again, it's reducing the complexity of the collection and better planning. So here, technology for sure, predictive demand planning through artificial intelligence can be super helpful.
Thank you very much. And probably we have time for one more question. So it's really hard to pick because there's so many. So does sustainability is becoming more and more important in all countries in the world, or does it remain a niche concept reserved to the Western countries?
No, we really think that this is a global issue, and it's, as I said, there have been a strong catch up from Chinese consumers on this topic. It's clear that if you go to San Francisco or LA, the awareness on this topic, or I don't know, in the Nordics is higher, but in reality, the younger generation in Asia and China specifically are really catching up and becoming very vocal on this topic. So it's a global topic. Plus, I think that there's been a big shift on luxury brands that were looking and discussing about their past and the heritage, and the gaze was on the past. Now the gaze is on shaping a future and a better present and a better future. So that's why it's a global issue. It's just that everyone, if it's young, is looking at its own future. And so these topics are just becoming more urgent for everybody.
Well, on that, positive outlook, I want to thank you one more time for your time, for being partners for the report and for doing this work together. And we really enjoy it, and for sharing with everybody your thoughts, your knowledge, and your positivity. And on that note, I'd like to over to Claudia, our Claudia. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Matteo and Claudia, for your time today. LuxCo 2030 is still available to download on Bain website, so you can go on their website. And at the end of the webinar, you will be redirected to the direct page. So if you haven't already, please get your copy now. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you soon. Thank you.